Hi guys, my name is Raoul Monks, founder and director of Flume Sales Training, and I'm joined by Anthony Parker, who is the GM of Mindtickle and also sales coach at replays.com. Today we're going to run a slightly unconventional webinar where we're not just going to be talking at you, we're going to be having a conversation between ourselves where we're throwing stats at each other around the state of sales training right now and looking at how billions of pounds and dollars are wasted on ineffective sales training every single year and what you guys can do about it. So within this conversation that Anthony and I will have, we'll be looking at insights into why training doesn't work in most cases, how to shift your business and people to ensure that the training actually delivers results. And also we're going to give you a plan at the end as to how to develop high-performing salespeople over the next year in your business. So without further ado, I'm going to start, Anthony, with the first stats. This one is 53% of why clients buy is down to the sales experience, but buyers report that only 58% of meetings that they have with sellers are actually valuable. So essentially, the sales experience is by far the most important thing, but buyers are saying most sellers aren't doing a good enough job. Thoughts, please.
Well, I would like to say I was surprised, and as a sales professional, I should be a bit more protective of the craft and profession of sales. But we know that we know it's a fact, and we know that unfortunately, a lot of the experiences that sellers give to potential clients is suboptimal because for many reasons. I think if you're looking at the first interactions, could be something like a cold outreach.
Yep.
It could be a discovery call, and quite often those are the fundamental, some people used to like to call them soft skills. I think soft skills does it a disservice. These are fundamental skills required for success. And for me, it's those fundamental skills and the gaps in that actually impact the client's experience. I mean, were you surprised when you saw that yourself?
No, I mean, I've been training for the last 11, 12 years, but we've also been coaching and shadowing and all of that stuff. And it is amazing because I think so many people, when they expect or think about kind of sales development, they think, let's go for the expert stuff. But I 100% agree with you. It is the foundations which make the core. And I think right now for sales people, getting the client to trust them and getting the client to actually buy into them as a person and get them to realize they're actually doing stuff for the right reason is so important. And that comes down to that, like you said, the right sort of outreach in the first place, the right sort of discovery where you're actually giving a damn about the person you're speaking to and actually looking for what's actually going to work. And I think so regularly salespeople focus on what they want to achieve and the money they want to make, and it causes the wrong approaches by salesperson with the client. It has such dramatic impacts.
No, I'm with you, and I think we'll develop some of these themes as the conversation goes. But I think from what I see out there, both in my role as GM, but also from a sales coach at Replays, there's a lot of best practice guidance that Replays brings to the party, and a lot of that is focused on those foundational qualities, because if you can't do good discovery and you don't know how to do the right discovery, you're going to just either ask really weak questions or you're going to turn it into a survey. Becomes absolutely brutal. And again, I think from an individual perspective, the theme of this is going to be all around sales training, sales coaching, and all of that. But the individual, there is so much out there, books, podcasts, all sorts of stuff now that the training should be the icing on the cake. The individuals need to take responsibility for that, but sales training focus on those foundational areas is absolutely critical. And obviously it's critical that is effective as well, not just done ticking the box.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that kind of commitment to sales mastery as a business is so crucial, because there's a commitment to revenue mastery, but absolutely what that does by focusing just on the revenue increase and celebrating that, and we'll probably talk about this a bit more later, but it actually almost makes the idea of learning and developing scary for the salespeople, because they feel like they should be performing well anyway. And often the kind of development around these sales skills are put in for the people who are underperforming. And I think there is a challenge there, because it creates what I know as the fixed mindset versus a growth mindset.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a big piece here that actually sales leaders and businesses can do to incentivize sales mastery to get the behaviors right to drive the revenues.
Absolutely. And if they do, it's actually going to be far cheaper in the long run. And if the individual's going through that, the manager's going through that, invest and really take it seriously and have that growth mindset, they're going to come off less of those calls where they really know it hasn't gone well. They don't get the outcome that they wanted, which was a successful diarized next step. They don't get the pipeline. It's easier for everyone to do the harder bit. But unfortunately, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals default to the easy route, which actually is a lot more difficult in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. I'm keen just before, I forgot to say to anyone who's watching this, Anthony and I, as you can probably tell, can talk and talk and talk. So we agreed to put a timer on, and we've only got about a minute left on this question. So we're going to get buzzed off and have to go to the next one. But I'm keen on your thoughts as to what's changed, because what I see is, again, coming to this fixed mindset. A lot of people think they do the sales approach in a brilliant way. And one of the things we talk about at Flume a lot is that the biggest mistake you can make in sales is to look at everything from your own perspective, not the client's. And there's been such substantial changes in client buying behavior. Even in the last year, the amount of decision makers based on what CEB/Gartner say is gone from 6.8 to 11 in the past year, which has massive implications on what a salesperson is going to be able to get away with, but also what the client is going to demand to be able to sell on. What have you kind of noticed over your career in terms of changes in sales approaches and what's working and what's not working?
Yeah, I think that shift that you've just articulated, obviously 11. I mean, I knew it was loads. I knew it was more than sort of 5, and I knew the CEB stats, but I'm surprised it's as high as 11. And in some ways, I'm not surprised it's as high as 11, because everyone now, especially when you're talking about technology going into a business to help individuals, it has a massive impact on lots. It touches lots of different departments. So for me, I have seen a shift in improving the buyer experience through having more educated sellers. Is just how companies are going about that at the moment. If they're not dealing with the likes of Flume, if they're not dealing with forward-thinking organizations, it can be a bit trying to reshape old-fashioned approaches for this new modern world. So I think that's critical, is finding the right partner. Right, Raoul, so now we're moving on to something that I know is close to your heart, and that is sales training effectiveness.
Yep.
The stat, as we can see there, is that only 17% of companies report that their sales training is effective. Personally, I am not surprised the number's that low. I am surprised that there's a lot of honesty and self-reflection in that number, but clearly Flume Training and you are looking to overcome that with your clients and looking to really help your training be more effective and get the outcomes. What do you think, first of all, when you see that stat of 17%, and what are you doing as an organization to ensure that you're delivering far more than that?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say, just having a look at that stat and thinking how it could have come across, that isn't 17% of Flume's clients, that is 17% full stop across the globe. But exactly. It's unfortunately not a surprise. And the reason I say that is because when back in 2010, I actually set up Flume, it was set up on one principle, which came from an aha moment I had as an L&D professional when I was training, coaching a team, a company called UBM. And I was asked after 3 weeks of doing my role, training people, bringing in trainers, I was asked by my CEO, what difference are you actually making in your role? And I was so excited because everyone had been giving us great feedback. So I went out to everyone and said, hey, what have you actually done with it? And everyone's like, what? It was a great day. I've done nothing with it. And it was that moment I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go back and say no one's actually actioned any of the training. And at that moment, I realized training isn't about the day. It's about everything after, because you can't quantify or qualify or prove anything otherwise. So that's actually why I set Flume up in 2010, is to create a sales training company that actually works. And that meant focusing on the embedding and focusing on the delivery to create engaging and memorable experiences. So it's not a surprise. But what I do find amazing is that is still the stat, because it's been that way for a long time. But the problem is that I think some people get away with it. And I think that salespeople and sales leaders, to be able to prove stuff right now in terms of any investment in sales training, they need and deserve and should demand better, and a focus on increasing sales performance, not just a nice day at the office.
Yeah, absolutely. And so from when we're talking about training, and you've just mentioned, obviously it goes way beyond the actual event itself.
Yeah.
Why do you think it continues to be so low? Because obviously sales is the most expensive part of the business. It's it has to be the profit center of the business. Why is it still, in effect, is it down to the individual's external or internal running the training? Is it down to sales? Why do you think that is?
It's a great question. And I think there's unfortunately a number of answers, but I do think a big part of it is that people, as learners, it's about personalization and actually buying into wanting to change in the first place.
Yep.
So much training is forced on people, even if they say, yeah, I'm excited about the training, they go into it almost thinking, I can probably get away with taking one or two little bits, and then they go away and forget it. And
Yep.
that isn't their fault. It's not for a lack of wanting to apply it, but it's blooming difficult to change habits. And I think a big part of that is actually creating a learning culture, a coaching culture, which we'll probably talk about maybe in the next stat. But this whole idea where people are doing it for the right reasons and they're expected to do stuff with this actual training. So I think a big part of it is bespoking it, making it feel like it's real life and applicable to that person who's learning it, but then also looking at celebrating people who use this stuff. And I think there are other changes as well. So one of the things that I went off and did when I had my epiphany back in 2010 is I went on a CIPD course and looked at how do you run training sessions that are memorable and all of that sort of stuff. And there's changes now in terms of people's memory and the way they learn, especially over the last year. Looking at things like bite-sized training has a far greater impact and fits into people's workflow. Being taken off of the phone and feeling like you're losing out on money because you're on a half an hour or half day Zoom session with a company over here who thinks they know what they're doing almost breeds resentment, and you're just thinking, I should be making that call, and you go off at the break and you make a load of calls and you come back and you kind of forget about it. So bite-sized learning has come in. The ability to actually recall stuff is really tough, and so being able to kind of remember that training needs to be at the heart of everything. And I think also one of the issues that makes ineffective training is where you just dump everything on a learner in a session, and actually small, powerful, back to your point earlier, fundamental lessons which people can apply over time is really crucial. And I think sometimes we just rush it and we try and kind of get as much as we can for our money as sales leaders, but actually we make the biggest mistake, which is not thinking from the learner's point of view. Sorry, it's a bit of a tirade of information there, but
I like it. How long? I don't want you. There we go. I knew that was coming.
Well, I haven't even asked you about. I'm just going to stop the timer, but your take. What do you think? I've stolen all the lines.
My take is I agree with everything you said, and we need to move on. But seriously, I think you've nailed it. I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay.
Everything you said is accurate, and the good news is that you're doing something about it as an individual and as an organisation. So I'm good.
Fab. All right, let's move on. My go. Okay, starting the timer now. So stat number 3, this is the biggie. It's the big dirty secret in sales training. Can't believe I'm saying this, but everyone has to know. 90% of sales training content is forgotten after 30 days without reinforcement and coaching. This is a massive one, I know, for you, Anthony, in terms of being close to your heart through Mindtickle and also replays, and at Flume being outcome obsessed, just like you guys. This is really key. But how big an issue do you think this actually is in the industry?
Yeah, so for me, it's the most fundamental issue that there is, because if we believe that 90% of sales training is forgotten within 30 days without doing anything, so 90% of what people are saying is forgotten in 30 days, what we're talking about is the purpose of sales training is to affect and change behavior to get results.
Yeah.
If 90% of what is being taught is forgotten, guess what? You're not going to get behavior change and you're not going to get results. The other challenge is that you cannot decide what 10% people remember. So they'll all remember something different.
Yeah.
And ultimately what you're then doing is scaling incompetence, because if person A remembers a different 10% to person B, they get together and try and help each other. It's just scaling that lack of knowledge. So any training, anyone listening to this who is spending money on training, whether internally or externally, and there is no reinforcement, no coaching program, you are literally wasting your money. You're not going to get the results you want. And the people coming and asking for that money know that. And that's what frustrates me, is people will ask for a lot of money for training and they know that 90% of it's going to be forgotten, and they're happy to tick that box and in 6 months repeat it. It's exactly why sales methodology, and I will stop after this one, it's exactly why sales methodology doesn't work in most organizations, and every 2 years everyone's rolling out a new methodology because they don't reinforce and they don't coach to that. So when you come at it from your angle, you know that this is a dirty secret. You know that competitors of yours are selling stuff maybe more expensive, maybe not, but they're not reinforcing, and you are. Why are you coming at it from that angle now? Why are you coming at it with a reinforcement and coaching focus?
I think partly because it's actually far more possible now. So about 3-4 years ago, we created the benchmark at Flume, which allowed us to create coaching questions and diagnostics. And that was when we were delivering the majority of our training face-to-face. With the move to Zoom, but also then the development of such amazing sales readiness technology, which is available right now, actually being able to deliver coaching in a different way has become possible. And so it's allowed us to do what we've always wanted to be able to do, but never been able to do. And I think one of the other realizations is that a lot of the clients we speak to, their sales leaders, not always, but have a reticence or resistance against coaching. And that kind of tends to come from three places, which is either they don't want to coach, they don't know how to coach, or they don't have time to coach. And so however much we kind of have been telling them, coach, we're trying to make it easy for you. Actually, when it comes to real life after the training, they don't find time. So what we now do is we build it in to the package and make it part of what they're accountable for, but also have massively simple ways for them to do it effectively. And I think the quick and simple answer is because it's much easier now with the technology available. But the beauty is it's always been needed, but now there's simpler ways to help people do it properly.
So what I'm hearing is that the Flume training, which is obviously available and helps sales with the fundamentals, sales skills, and obviously gives those outcomes, is actually available on a sales readiness platform, maybe called Mindtickle. So, so you've got the best of both worlds there. So your training and the reinforcement is coming, and that essentially that's why we're speaking. That's why we obviously are partnering together, because we fundamentally believe the same thing. We don't have the training within our platform. You don't have the technology. So it was obviously a great partnership that made all the sense in the world to solve some of these problems.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of the other amazing bits about it is it allows peer-to-peer recognition and best practice sharing, and that is tough right now. But using a sales readiness platform to create best-in-class demonstrations and share those submissions and celebrate that through the technology that you guys have got, it's phenomenal, and it's changed everything for our clients. So yeah, we'll stop congratulating each other because the buzzer has gone.
Exactly.
Okay, Anthony, we're going to start the timer. Are you ready?
Yep.
Go.
Let's do this. So stat number 4 is that 92% of people who responded said that measurement was one of their top training challenges. Now, measurement, another word for measurement is outcomes, and at Mindtickle we are outcome obsessed. It's a critical reason, and probably one of the main, if not only, reasons that companies buy a technology like Mindtickle is to help with that, at those outcomes and the measurement. But from you again, Raoul, from a sales training perspective, with or without Mindtickle, forget Mindtickle for now, when we're talking about measurement, what does measurement mean? What should it mean? And why is it such a challenge?
I think there's two bits to this in terms of what it is. Why it's a challenge I'll go into as well. So I'll try and keep it brief because I'm aware of time. But number one is that people, the reason it's tough to measure is because often people don't know what to measure. And in my opinion, there's two things to measure. One is behavioral change in terms of the areas in sales you want to master. and two is the impact on sales performance. Now,
Yep.
what normally happens is 2-3 months after training, the sales leader looks at the sales performance bit and says, oh, it's worked, or oh, it hasn't worked, or oh, I don't know if that's actually because of the training. And so it makes it very difficult. And one of the big things is because people don't know what good looks like in terms of the behavioral change they want to make. So actually a huge piece here in terms of being able to measure properly is having an agreed agreement as to what good looks like, whether it's a benchmark, whatever you want to call it, because unless there is a, this is brilliant and this is rubbish, and this is where you're starting, this is where you're getting to, this is where you need to get to, it's very difficult to associate any behavioral change to any real impact on performance. But the other thing is, because of the way a lot of training is designed, it's designed based on, I want my team to be better at objection handling, I want my team to be better negotiators. When we start actually bringing KPIs into the discussion early on and finding out what do you need to shift, that gives any sales trainer, whether it's us at Flume or someone else, a focus they can't ignore. Because if they know what they're going to be measured on, then they're going to take it far more seriously in terms of designing that. So actually what we do now at Flume is we bring it in very early and we continuously measure it throughout the program. So there's a lot of different pieces here, but one of the big bits is helping, I don't want to say helping clients because, but knowing what good looks like, agreeing that, knowing beforehand where you're starting, knowing where you need to get to, and regularly measuring that, because you need to be able to connect the behavior with the performance increase.
Yeah.
What have you guys seen? Because I know you do tons on this at Mindtickle.
Yeah. So for us, it is something that we are constantly working on, constantly striving to get better at, and also from our clients' perspective, we have a lot of some of the world's fastest growing organizations that use Snowflakes, LinkedIn, MongoDB. The reason I mention those organizations is because they are right at the forefront. They're also the fastest growing organizations on the planet. But what they care about is not what training are we going to do today, is what are we going to improve in our revenue engine, and how do we work back on that? So using data, it's not about just doing negotiation training. It's about our average selling price is lower than X or Y, or our cross-sell upsell is down X%. We now need to make sure that the sales individuals, as a result of the training, come away with the skills and the behavior change to do X, Y, and Z, meaning talk about a solution earlier in the cycle than they were before, for example. All of these things can be very easily measured in a CRM. And when you've got the stats from Mindtickle, for example, around the behaviors and the skills, you can correlate a change in knowledge, skills, and execution with a behavior change with results. And this is actually easier to do than what people are doing now. And those that are doing it don't have the problem with resource, don't have the problem getting access to budget. And it's the ones that are not doing it who are sitting there with a team of one or two complaining about not having the resource. And when we talk to them about what they need to do, they say that sounds a bit like hard work. Yeah, no, whatever. It is hard work. And that's why the people that are doing it are flying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, buzzer has been set. Number 5. So, Anthony, only 14% of all annual training is focused on management skills. So the leadership gets a tiny portion of that investment. How does that resonate with you? Does that ring true?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, when I heard it was 14%, I thought that was actually, based on what I see, that's actually higher than I expected. I would have guessed less than 10%. It definitely rings true. And I think that when we talk about 90% being forgotten unless it's reinforced, which can be done with technology and embedded through coaching, which is about humans and technology, unique coaching, to me, it's just crazy that such a small amount of that investment is spent on the most scalable part of an organization, which is the manager and their ability to coach. However, when I hear it's spent on management skills, automatically I'm thinking, I bet at least half of that is on about management. What's your view on what that money should be spent on, and what versus what it perhaps potentially is being spent on?
Well, Okay, so I think there's a few bits here, and I think it's a really good question, because actually the management kind of fundamentals, you should be almost hiring for that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
when you look at the research from Gartner and what high performing sales leaders are doing, they're doing three things. 73% of what they are strong at is across these three things, and that is selling, i.e., being client facing themselves, coaching their teams, and sales innovation, which by that they mean unblocking block deals, so working with reps at the
Absolutely.
moment they need it to unblock those. And actually, a lot of people, you're not naturally skilled in that stuff, but when you look at the impact that one manager can have on sales performance across the team, times the average manager by 10 people that they manage, let's say, and you think about the investment in one of them and you times it out by 10, and then you look at the research, is if you coach the core, then you can see an upturn in 19% in performance and revenues. You get ridiculous figures. And you start thinking, well, everyone's putting the money and almost blaming the sales team. Why not enable the sales leaders to be brilliant coaches, brilliant sales innovators, and brilliant client-facing people themselves? And they're going to be able to pass it all out. And I think I think you're right. People tend to focus the training for sales leaders on that kind of becoming a manager and the fundamentals. But you can getting good coaches, getting good at unblocking block deals, and genuinely working with their teams at the moment they need them. It's going to be a game changer. What have you seen in terms of the companies you guys work with and anyone who's kind of doing this well?
Yeah, and I think we even with the companies that are at the really top of their game, there's still work for them to do, which is actually great news, because there's so much more you can get from turning that on and improving that over time. But what I have seen and what I do hear is a hell of a lot of really bad excuses about why managers can't coach, why managers aren't included in the programs, while there's excuses made by managers and for managers all the time, and the expectation that enablement has on managers sometimes, I mean, I very rarely hold my tongue. I just think, what are you talking about? These people are paid a decent amount of money, more than any of their team as a basic. They're going to earn less than their top producer, but they're paid more to get these people performing. They're not paid to do spreadsheets. So haven't got time to coach. We've got conversation intelligence built into Mindtickle. There are some people, when we're talking to them, they say, oh no, our managers haven't got time to listen to calls. We don't even ask them to listen to calls. We're asking them to look at data that will give them insights in about 2 minutes. But already the excuse is, oh, they haven't got time to do that. Well, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what we see. From your perspective, though, when you're looking either in the past or in this new remote world, how are you seeing getting managers involved in that, and how have you seen that change over the last sort of 12, 18 months?
I don't, in a way, I don't know that it has changed in terms of the overall feedback and sentiment we get. One thing that I think is massively important here that causes that problem is actually what sales leaders and the heads of businesses see sales leaders' role as being. What is their purpose? And ultimately, if you nail it down and really drill into it, what is the only reason a sales leader should exist? It is to make it easier for the sales teams to sell more. And so if you have that as your core purpose, your core why, what would you spend yourself time doing? Coaching, helping them plan, unblocking block deals, sticking to time limits, things like that. But actually, a lot of them don't. And it is tougher now because there's so much has changed that actually it can still feel like you only need to do that stuff when there's a problem. But being able to do that all the time is absolutely crucial right now.
No, I agree.
Okay, so we've been through the 5 stats now. Anthony, you didn't know I was going to ask you this, but I'm going to just ask you to give the audience one nugget of information or one tip that you think is really important around sales development. What do you want to leave them with?
Yeah. So for me, if you're a salesperson, sales manager, sales enablement, or a CRO or head of sales, everything that we've covered today impacts each of those groups of people. So it's all about focusing on the outcome. So focusing on what you actually want the result of the training to be, what behavior change is required to get that, and then looking at the organizations you're speaking to from a training perspective, and are they coming to you and talking about behavior change? Are they talking about outcomes? Or are they sitting there trying to sell you training that they've been repeating for the last 10, 15, 20 years? That's my takeaway.
Ladies and gents, just to sum up today and to give you this 5-step plan, I don't know why I did that because that's 10, but 5-step plan. Ultimately, when you're looking at buying or delivering your own sales training, number one, make sure that the content is right, that it's built for today's buyer, it's the right behaviors the sales teams actually need to drive with their clients, because without that, it ain't going to work. Number two, make sure the delivery mechanism is right. So build it for the learner, bite size, spread out the learning, and make sure it fits into their workflow. Number three, focus on that coaching. Without that coaching, 90% of content is lost. So make sure that there's reinforcement, there's incentive, and people are being held accountable for applying that training in the workplace. Number four, make sure you know how to measure it. And to be able to do this, you need a benchmark. You need to agree what good looks like. You need to know the behaviors you want to change, where they are before, where you want to get them to afterwards. And you need to continuously look at the performance improvement around the KPIs you can actually measure. And then number five, don't just invest in the salespeople, invest in the sales leaders. You're going to see a 10-fold increase in terms of impact if you get that right. Focus on getting them brilliant at coaching, sales innovation, unblocking block deals, and selling themselves. And then make sure that they are in place to embed and drive in any sales training program that you do. So if you're keen to find out more around how to make the best investment in training and how to actually purchase training and development for your sales teams that is going to drive impact, we've created a white paper to make that as safe as possible for you guys to make the best investment wherever that is. If you want to find out more about it, then just get in touch with us and we'll send you through the benchmark. It's been a pleasure. Anthony, great to have you here. And everyone, thank you very much.